with
Okay, I think
our
we're ready.
speakers, so just a little patience.
Everything
But
works.
thank you for joining. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, perfect.
Everything works.
Awesome. Okay. So welcome everyone to the data engineering track. My name is Joanna Perdomo, your host, and our co-host today is Ruben Barrios, and we'll be moderating the chat and the Q&A during the session. Today we have our guest, Omri Orgad, and he'll be addressing the question, has web data become part of today's core business fabric? Omri is tech-savvy business leader with extended experience working in the network software and security industries. He has a deep familiarization with multiple global markets, serving in several senior leadership technology-based roles. He has vast experience in business negotiation, forming strategic, profitable partnerships with large-scale enterprises, as well as working with startups and SMEs, accelerating their growth and entering new markets. And I won't take any more of his time. We'll hand it off to the speaker. Thanks for being here, Omri.
That's a very committing intro, and I will definitely try to live up to it. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for joining and contributing to your time for listening. As introduced, my name is Omri, and I'm leading the North America activities and business for Bright Data. I've been part of Bright Data for the past 7 years. I've seen the great growth that we've been part of, specifically with Bright Data, and also the web data and online data market. And today I'll discuss how crucial has become web data to the business fabric and part of our day-to-day business, and how web data is essential for every strategic, can be essential for every strategic business decisions. So let's start, won't we? So first, I want to show how the internet in today's business environment is part of the reality, and in order to make, or is the reality, and in order to make good business decisions, you always need to have a direct access to the reality. So a couple of weeks ago, the eastern coast of the US was hit by Hurricane Henry. And we all felt, as soon as, or those of us who were in the East Coast, felt how a major event like that creates immediate impact on our environment and also on our data environment or our online environment. Immediately, once such a major event like that hits, there are petabytes and petabytes of information that are instantly created. You see how new data is created by the changes of fuel prices, by the changes of the availability of transportation. The travel prices immediately changes, even if it's only Uber local changes. The availability of flights, electricity outages. So there is a change in the core business environment, but also there are also changes to the social media. There is news references. All of this information is in real time, and all of this information is useful when we make business decisions. A bit about us. So we at Bright Data gained our expertise through our network with our 10,000 customers over the past 7 years. We have now launched the Bright Initiative, where we work with more than 100 academic institutes and NGOs, and where we help them to carry out vital research using online data. Sorry. So we, with the Bright Initiative, are promoting public well-being and environmental protection. We are encouraging data-driven expertise through education and research, and we are also promoting web transparency. The value of real-time data is on the rise, and we see our economic market is making giant steps toward real-time status, and we are also seeing emerging data-driven technologies that are leading the way in the transformation. So we at Bright Data knew that over the past 2 years in particular, there's been a dramatic increase in demand for alternative data. And there was increase in demand for our services from hedge funds, insurance companies, banks, and other financial institutes. But we wanted to really find out what the market really want and need. So we contacted 100 organizations, and actually we were very excited to see the results. So first of all, 95% of financial services organizations are relying on alternative data and online data to contribute towards business decisions. That's almost everyone. 64% of the organizations that are relying on alternative data says it impacts their investment strategies. And very nearly a quarter from financial services industries use alternative data to aid their work daily. And I think this is great news. One, almost everyone are acknowledging the value of information, the value of data to make decisions. But we see, and for our market, the data market, we see that only 24% are using it every day. That means that there is still a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to innovate and create more value for our customers. But we also, and that's another survey that we generated, we saw that ESG is something that organizations and consumers are taking very seriously. So environment, social, and governance data in business decisions is no longer a nice to have. It is a business necessity. Every business nowadays is not only valued by its investors and shareholders for its profit margins, but it is measured by its residual effect on the environment and the way it treats its, and also the way it treats its employees and the diversity. So we at Bright Data carried a second survey asking companies how they use data to make strategic decisions on ESG, and 76% of US organizations surveyed claimed they use the investment decisions are impacted by ESG factors, and online data could have a huge effect on the amount of information, availability of information that organizations are taking in to make those business decisions or those ESG decisions. And so that brings me to the next point, that the web is the most extensive information archive available today, not only of facts. It is also a library of consumer sentiments and consumer opinions. The past information, alongside the continuous real-time updates, allows us to have an accurate understanding of the present and make precise decisions for the future. There is no business decisions that cannot be informed by online data, and I'll use 3 examples for that. The first example is Matheson. Matheson is created a technology that helps world-renowned enterprises to source diverse talent. We have been working with Matheson to help them tap online data to gather and source information from diversity networks, so they can then identify potential candidates. Once we collect this data, this information, Matheson presents the information about job seekers to companies looking to hire diverse candidates, allowing them to reach out and start recruiting. We've worked with Matheson to create an innovative system to manage diversity recruitment, strategy measurement, and reporting. The platform centralizes hundreds of inclusive talent networks and uses AI to help employers find candidates for the most important roles. And without Bright Data's technology, they would be forced to build and maintain data sets manually every time they partner with a new organization, which would take them a lot of time and plenty of resources. And we see how diversity is, and as a part of the ESG that I discussed, is not only nice to have, it is also well recognized by companies such as HelloFresh, such as TripAdvisor, and Sonos. The federal Communication Commission the FCC spends billions of dollars trying to give internet access to all Americans and close what they call the digital divide. The FCC was using information from the ISPs, internet service providers, to create a coverage map. This information is then used to calculate the number of US citizens with internet access. So Princeton University wanted to create an accurate map of the digital access across the US, and they did so using bright data technology. A third example is Georgia Southern University, and the real estate market has a profound effect on our day-to-day life. It has both business repercussions and also social repercussions. And this is also an interesting point around how data can be used same data can be used by different organizations or different stakeholders within an organization to make different decisions. And we have been working with Georgia Southern to examine the real estate market and how it is fairly managed. They've yet to release their findings on this, but we are helping them to use publicly available data and alternative information to do so. The information itself can be used for multiple purposes. So, for example, let's say we are insuring or investing or financing in 5 buildings in central London. There could be several risks. One could be the distance from the river, could be crime risk in the area, businesses surrounding the area, pollution risk, and so on, all public information. And even though those buildings might have the same risk, the same actuarial, the actuarial risk could look very different. And it is alternative data about those buildings that give you the exact assessment, the exact risk assessment. So nobody wants to read yesterday's news, of course, and using all information is making decisions based on yesterday's news. Online information is updated immediately, and you can see that in real-time intelligence, for example. You can see that in market inventory, and you can see that in social media. And you always need to ask yourself, are you keeping your information updated? Is it really real-time? So web data is becoming an active component in every important decisions. We see that it's a flexible source of information reflecting real-time, and there is a lot of it. And all we have to do is to know how to tap into it. And I think when you tap into it, there is the first thing that you do, as there is such an enormous amount of data on the web, is you need to think about the definition of the data, or you need to define what is the information that you're looking for that might answer your question. And we always see that when you start small, it is the best way or the most efficient way to start. Is you ask a question, you start small, you find the beginning, and then you test and verify. And that allows you to immediately go big and automate, almost immediately, due to the extensive amounts or the big amounts of information. You need to go through a process where you ask a question, you start small manually, and then you go big and automate. Which brings us to my point about Hurricane Henry, and we go back to the beginning, is that every event, small or big, creates a digital footprint. And all of those footprints are a public part of the public domain. And it is there for us to make real-time, accurate decisions. Every event creates a great reservoir of useful information for your business decisions. And I appreciate your time. I would love to take questions or any thoughts about the matter.
Thank you, Omri, for your presentation. And so if folks have any comments or questions, please drop them in the Q&A or the chat. So we'll give you all a few moments. And while we wait, Ruben and I can ask questions. Ruben, do you have any questions for Omri?
Yes, actually, I have a question about how do you manage the open data and how do you successfully merge with the proprietary data of a company or an institution that you work with?
We manage the publicly available data. And our efforts around that is one, to make sure that first of all, of course, the data is collected efficiently. But the second thing is to make sure that all of the compliance guidelines are in place. So I would say our efforts around it are, one is to allow the collection of mass amounts of information. But the second effort is to make sure that everything is completely under the compliance and legal guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Omri.
Do you find there's ever any resistance from folks when you introduce this idea of using public web data for their efforts?
That's a good question, and I think the first thing we need to think about when we come to those kind of questions is to understand that this is public domain. And when you operate in the public domain, and this is our information, this is public information, then the resistance turns into understanding. So I think this is a part education, part business needs, and the third part is actually creating the legal blueprints. In the first survey that we carried around alternative data, there were two major obstacles around creating a public information, public data collection efforts in the financial markets. And the first is actually, and the most prominent one, was the technological efforts. Building the team, understanding that this is huge amounts of information. So we are collecting, petabytes of information. And the second thing is actually the legal blueprints. So I think once you have the understanding and you create the blueprints, you're usually good to go.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I can see a lot of applications too, especially for organizations that provide support to the public, where having this real-time data would be beneficial. But that's great.
I think in the past I've been doing this, and I'm part of Bright Data for 7 years, and this is a great journey as an employee. Also, not only as somebody who has working in this environment. And I think you see more and more imagination goes into the application. I mean, you see Princeton, you see Georgia Southern, but you see also organizations thinking about how they can utilize public domain information that's there, already created, in order to make business decisions. So I think it's we see a lot more proficiency today that allows more imagination, that allows more use cases. So I think we'll see a lot more of it in the future.
As just based on your experience, has that journey really accelerated, or because I think even a few years ago, this was still something that a lot of folks were very skeptical about using public domain data. I think there's, just like you were saying, not as much understanding. Do you think people are gaining more of that awareness?
Definitely acceleration. Definitely. Not even, I'm not even hesitant about it. Definitely acceleration. And we see more people working in this environment. So that's first indication. And the second indication, I'll use the private investment markets as an example, the private equities. We see more demand from that section of the financial markets, mainly because they need to approach deals faster. They need to identify deals faster. There's more money, money in their markets. So the markets are pushing them for faster decisions, and they found out that faster decisions using real-time information from the public domain is definitely the way to do it. So that's only one market, and we're not talking about retail, and unfortunately travel now is less of something that works, but before that travel was a big part of it. Every market that you can think of, I would say it this way, you don't have the privilege to be a strictly brick and mortar business anymore.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That makes sense that that's the direction we're going in.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to maybe speak a little more to the work that Bright Data does. I know that you focused a lot here on different web data platforms, but if there's anything that you wanted to point out more specific to draw people's attention to it.
That's another good question. I think when we look at Bright Data, our efforts around, I think the Bright Initiative may be the best thing to spotlight at this time is we have been working hard to make sure that the online data collection for us, but also for the market, is taking an ethical, compliant, structured path. And the Bright Initiatives allows us to help institutions, NGOs, universities to collect data ethically and use it for good purposes. So this is kind of the outline to what we do. And I think the entire market, I hope, will follow in those efforts to make sure that this market goes into that direction.
Yeah, and I can see how there's even a clear path between that initiative and the work that is more geared towards business decisions. That's so if folks have any comments or Q&A, I see there's a question. So Akiva asks, what makes you guys different than other data companies doing the same, or is your tech?
I think what makes us different is, one is, in terms of technologies, it's kind of, you need to prove yourself, but from what I know, what I've seen, our technology is an excellent technology that works. And the second thing, I think our ethical stance around online data is what makes Fortune 500 and universities and NGOs very comfortable with working with us. There is kind of a triangle when you work on data in the data business, which is the tech efforts, and that I think we've proven ourselves as a tech leader in this market. You're still good as your last deal. Sorry I come from a sales background, so you're only good as your last deal, but you still have to prove yourself on a daily basis. My thoughts around it is that we are proving ourselves. The ethical stance and the legal stance, I think, is something that is makes us clear-cut leaders, and that's my thoughts around it.
Yeah, so there's still about a little over 10 minutes left in the session. So if folks have any other questions, this is a great opportunity to ask Omri. I think not just about the work that they're doing at Bright Data, but I know that sometimes at the conference we have students who attend. If you have questions and want to ask about his journey, advice on how to break into the field, those are great questions too. No question is a bad question. So I think another question is, let's say you're a company. I know you had a slide and you talked a little bit about where to start, and you had that great progression of steps. I don't know if you can maybe elaborate more on those steps. And let's say we're starting at zero and we need to define that data that you need. How would you recommend we go about doing that? Especially if we're maybe at an organization who hasn't done this before, how can we approach
the first way to look at it is, first of all, about the questions. It's all about the questions. And the best projects that we've seen and projects that I've seen going from 0 to 100 and that are big projects or big products that are working today are quick iterations of the information that's available. It's kind of like the movie Moneyball, where they sit and there is a general manager. I love that example. It's a great movie, always works. And the question is, can you get to first base? That's a simple question with a simple answer, with a number behind it. And we try to. There are big discussions around big projects, but it's always the first question that starts that, and then question after question, you have to build that. I think it's kind of diluting the strategy into tactics and then moving on from there. And that's one thing. And the second thing is, we need to understand when you look at online data, there's data sets that are really available when you look at the web data on the online information. You look for prices. That's a simple question. But there are questions that are a little bit more complicated, like who sells more, who has inventory, or who is more influencing than somebody else, or what company is ranked as opposed to other companies, for many reasons. You just need to make sure that you understand the complexity of the question and the path to go there. The information is always there, and there's always numbers that you can cross-reference to make sure that the data set aligns and so on. Won't go into the details, but it all revolves about asking simple questions and quick iterations, which leads us to the layers of different layers of complexity for different data sets. And I think this is kind of where the market is going today. Am I layer 1, where we see prices, or am I at layer 5, where I'm looking for the number 1 product for the best seller of in whichever marketplace? So always start with a quick question.
And at what point would it make sense for an organization to get in contact with Bright Data? So does Bright Data also help, or would be willing to help organizations formulate maybe some of those questions, or would it make more sense to contact you all once those questions are set and you all are providing more of that technical help?
I think that the Bright initiative proved that we're willing to put our effort into it. We have customers that have been with us from the beginning, which is greatly appreciated, and we really gained our expertise, working in this market. I've been here from almost the beginning, and we have a team of people that are dedicated to this market. So, no strings attached. Feel free to ask me. I'm not, even if you're a student or I'm not, we're not, we love this market. We're working on making sure that this is something that, stays. We're building an ethical approach. We're building infrastructures around it, the compliance procedures and everything you can think about. And this is, I think, our proof that we are looking at this in kind of in a wider sense.
Do you have any recommendations for folks how can get involved with the work that the Bright Initiative does? I think particularly in helping to bring more transparency.
I think you can see there are amazing projects there. I mean, things that I didn't even imagine happening. And first of all, Karen from our company is leading that. Feel free to contact her or me. But go over the website. There's stuff that people are doing there that's amazing. I mean, anything from anti-sex trafficking to making sure that the real estate prices are fair and managed, all the way to the availability of internet to all. So I think it's a very interesting place to read about unique projects.
Yeah, and for folks listening, yesterday Karen and Asaf from Bright Data gave a wonderful presentation in the Data for Good track. So if you wanted to take a look and reference what Omri just talked about, the slides should be available. And I think there's a recording of their talk, and it was great. So definitely check it out. It doesn't look like folks have any other questions.
All right.
I don't know if Ruben, you had any other questions? Okay, well, Omri, we'll give you back about 5 minutes of your time. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and for all of the great comments afterward. Thank you everyone for attending the session. We hope you enjoy the rest of DataCon LA. Definitely check out the work that Bright Data is doing. They're one of our gold sponsors for this conference, so definitely lots of gratitude and appreciation for that support and for the good work that you're doing. And if you're interested in providing feedback, there's a link in the chat that you can go to. We appreciate any feedback. And thank you, Omri, again. Have a wonderful
Thank you, Omri.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Bye.